Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm so glad that you're here because together we're going to work through big stuff. Hey there, and welcome back to Big Stuff. When the thing that you never thought about, your appearance, or maybe you do think about quite a lot, but you maybe take it for granted, suddenly becomes the first thing that everybody notices. Today, you're going to meet someone super special to talk about identity, confidence, and the unexpected gifts that come from standing out in all the ways you never planned. Carolyn Ozkoseoglu, like all of us, is many things. She's a mum of 2 primary school age boys, a wife to a man who rocks a mustache, a sister, a daughter, and just one with a really huge heart and a great sense of humour and killer negotiating skills. I know all of this because she's also one of my best friends and the godmother to my 2 kids. Carolyn also works in the film and TV industry. She's the Vice President, Co-Head of Distribution, Australia and New Zealand for Sony Pictures Television, one of the largest film and TV production studios and distributors in the world. And she'll hate me for saying this because she's very modest, but she is excellent at her job. As part of her work, Carolyn jets off to Cannes, Los Angeles, and London, just to name a few destinations, where the film and TV industry meet annually to meet directors, actors, producers, and distributors to see what's on the market to buy and sell both in film and TV. It's an industry notoriously obsessed with physical appearance, even at that studio and distribution level. Which is fine because Carolyn was a woman who was comfortable with herself and her appearance in that fast-paced world. That was until about 6 years ago, when, as Carolyn was returning to work after the birth of her second child, her hair began falling out in ever-increasing chunks. Today, she's going to share with us her experience of Alopecia Universalis that stripped her entire body of every single hair, never to grow again, and how that forced her to reevaluate her relationship with her appearance and brave the world with a physical difference that often changes the way she is perceived in the world. Let's get to the podcast. Hello, Carolyn, and welcome to Big Stuff.
Thank you. It's really lovely to be here.
Yeah, well, we've talked about me doing a podcast for a while, so it's kind of fitting that you're right up in there, one of the very first guests.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy that you asked as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've got a great story. There's no doubt about it. Now, I've been very fortunate to come and do sort of work with your leaders and your teams, actually. So tell us a little bit about what you do and who you do it for and what that's like.
Yeah, so it's a really sort of neat role that I have. And I always find it quite tricky to explain to people that don't work in film and television. But so what I do is I manage the rights of content coming out of one country and into another. And I largely look after content coming out of the US into Australia and New Zealand. So what's involved in that is pitching the product, letting our clients know who's in it, what the show is about, how much it costs, and why we think they're going to love it and why we think it's going to be something that they desperately need to have on their services. Not all product is for everyone, and so it's about finding the right home for the right show and then maximizing the value back to the producers of the content. I always really feel like we're looking after producers' babies in a way. I know how much they care for them and making sure that they get the right value. So that's
I got to say, you're invaluable to me. So whenever I think I've finished all of the streaming services available, I'm like, oh, I've watched everything. And you're like, oh, you really need to see this. Watch a lot, don't you? That's part of your job, which many people, I think, would be like a dream job, is you have to consume a lot of the content so that you know it intimately when you're trying to talk about it and sell it and move it along, right?
Absolutely. And thankfully, I do love it as well. And so I love watching a lot of television. And then I do feel a bit guilty as well, talking to others about what I do. And when I'm explaining that, yeah, I have to watch a lot of television, it does sound a little crazy to that's what I get to do for my work. My husband also works in the film industry. He's in post-production, and I see how hard they work. And we work hard as well, but it's a different kind of hard. It's sitting down, talking about the content with our clients over a lovely meal in LA or in London or the south of France. And I know that's not what the people are doing who are actually making the shows. And then we get to sit around and talk about how wonderful they are. So, yeah, I'm very, very lucky. I feel very fortunate.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned, going to south of France and going to LA and really being amongst where the action is at. How appearance focused do you find that industry? And I mean, is it really not a big deal? Is it, at that level, or does everybody really try to, look swanky when you're going to the fancy luncheons?
Yeah, I think, because what I do is sales. And so I think part of selling is also your image, for me anyway. I mean, going right back to when I first started, and a woman who I used to work for, she always looked incredible. And I always thought, I really liked the way she presented herself as part of this sales process, because any kind of interaction at all that we have with our clients, you're selling. And that for me came down to how we look and how I thought you needed to look as well, and how I wanted to present myself. I am part of the story, and how I look today is just part of it. So, yeah, there is, obviously in front of the camera, there's all of the actors and all that kind of stuff. But this is different. It's very much behind the camera, behind the scenes, the business side of the business. So, yeah, there is, but it's not as spoken and it is not as overt.
All right.
I would say.
Why don't you take us back then? Take us back to 6 years ago. What was going on for you at the time? And what happened?
So I was just coming back off a year mat leave with my little guy, and I had some postpartum hair loss with him. So a little bit of, hair loss to a point where it was quite noticeable, and I was covering up with, headbands. But each time my hair came back.
It's quite normal. It's quite normal, right? Postpartum hair loss is not anything to be concerned about.
That's right. That's right. Although it was quite pronounced. And the second one with Max was a lot more than it was with Casey, but came back. And if I went back to work, my period returned as well. I just stopped breastfeeding, period returned, back to work. My little guy was getting quite sick with daycare and, back into the stress of having sales targets and all that kind of stuff, plus 2 little children as well. And, Max was still really a baby at 12 months when you're going back.
Of course.
So I still can really vividly remember when I was in a meeting with Channel 7, one of my favourite clients, and talking to them about one of our shows.
You're allowed to have favourites? Oh, my goodness. Are you allowed to have favourites? You've just said that publicly. Sorry, yes, carry on. You were talking about a show.
And I noticed, when you notice strands of hair, your own hair falling down, normal, but this was quite a lot. And I thought, geez, that's a lot of hair sort of falling down around me in this meeting. But I didn't think anything of it. And then as time sort of went on, I continued to notice, the hair, and it became even more pronounced in the shower when it became clumps of hair coming out as well. So this was all very strange because, I'm not postpartum anymore, and I didn't know what was happening because I'd never heard of alopecia areata or universalis. I'd never heard of them. And so I had no idea. So, of course, off to the doctor I went and got lots of blood tests. Looking back on it now, it was pretty, I think, obvious what was happening to me, but they, still had to go through all of these tests. I can't remember what it was that started to make them think that potentially I had cancer. So off I went to have some other tests done, and then also sent off to see a dermatologist finally. And then strangely, when I was at the dermatologist, they had to take a little biopsy from the top of my head. And I had that done at the time. And then that finally came back, and that told us that I had this autoimmune condition. called, at the time, they thought it was just alopecia areata. I mean, they weren't aware of my the extent of how bad it was actually going to get because it was still very early days. So yeah, then I went away. There was nothing really. It was funny when you go to a dermatologist, they're more about this is what it is. And that's kind of it. Here are all the things you can look at getting done, which was there was some topical ointments that I could have, steroids it was that I was offered, steroids to either rub on it or needles or take a steroid as well. But I was always, and then there was other drugs as well that I could take, but I was always very conscious that I had the two little guys. I didn't want to take anything as well that would control my hormones, like steroids, things like that. And so I always kept just coming out with, I'm just going to see where this goes. And then in the space of a month, all of my hair really started to all fall out. I was trying to cover it up with scarves. I was putting it up in little buns. I was doing all of these other tricks to try and hide all the patches.
Yeah.
And
You were
eventually,
essentially doing the comb over, like you were trying to do a comb over, right?
Yeah.
Or cut the comb around. I remember it.
yeah.
How was it making you feel? Like, what was going through your head and your heart? Because having a diagnosis of alopecia areata, as it was at that time, I mean, it's not life-threatening. It's not really seen as an illness as much as a condition, I suppose. So physically, you were more or less okay, even though it's an autoimmune disorder, and we know that that's kind of nervous system and stuff like that. But what were you thinking and feeling about what was happening to you physically?
I just wanted to hide. One of the first things that was coming to my mind, strangely, was, how are all of my friends going to feel about me? How are all the people I work with going to feel about me? Will they even want to interact with me? Deep sense of grief. I remember I was repulsed by it all, and I just couldn't believe. I was not sure how I was going to face the world whilst this was all happening. So I was madly scrambling online, looking for people who were in the same situation and what they were doing. And it was wigs. And so I was looking at all of these different wigs that I could take and things that were more permanent and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, how could I hide this was the first reaction that I had. Yeah. And just a lot of tears, crying while driving, crying everywhere. I remember just crying a lot through it all.
Yeah. It's a huge part of identity. I mean, I can think of a couple of people who I follow online. Leah Simmons from Kaya, even. She rocks a skinhead. I remember the day she shaved it and she was crying because it was such a ritualistic thing and sort of losing this part of her identity. But she was empowered in that. It was a choice, whereas yours was very much, something that really happened to you at that time. One specific memory I have that was really vivid was a conversation that we had where I was just like, it's time for you to take it in hand. And what do you remember of maybe that conversation and then what happened after?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mention that. I mean, the support that I got from you, from my beautiful husband, my mum, everyone encouraging me to take control of it. And I knew I had to, but that moment of I had to get there myself as well.
Of course.
So yeah, whilst everyone was so supportive, it was also I was very much on my own with all of it as well. So yeah, making that decision to shave it off was huge. And yeah, we recorded it together. I got Sam to shave my hair off. Still find it very hard. It was so raw, the process of it. But yeah, once I'd done it and it was all off, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and thinking, well, actually, I really quite like this. Isn't this a funny turn of events to look at myself and go, actually, I quite like this. I know it's still going to be really hard to walk out that front door because it's really different and I'm going to stand out. But I liked what I saw in the reflection. So that was a nice feeling. So I was walking around the house with this new hairdo, but then I knew I had to walk outside.
Yeah.
And that was going to be the big next step.
So that's that's quite a moment, I think, to be able to face down this thing that you really sort of feared and you really dreaded, and to suddenly think, oh, actually, it's okay. It's okay. How was that for you to feel that shift? Like the worst thing, what was perceived as the worst thing is suddenly, oh, actually, it's not too bad. And I have to say this, you have got a spectacularly good looking head. Like, it is a perfect head. Everybody, it's as good from the back as it is from the front. It is a very perfectly round, lovely, smooth head. How was it for you to realize that you actually could choose, I guess, how you felt about it or how you went about this?
Yeah. I mean, that felt good. In my heart, I knew I liked how I looked, but I knew still that it was going to be a major journey, and I still was a long way away from feeling strong enough to feel confident in this new way out and about amongst people that don't know and love me. So that was the next challenge. First challenge, shaving it off, knowing that I felt okay about it, but then,
facing the world, sure. That happened in the next day or two as well, right?
It did. I mean, it was pretty shocking when I look back on how quickly I pulled the Band-Aid off, and big thanks to, all of my lovely support network around me, getting there. Actually, I remember you and I had a session.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, before I went back to work. So that was a big, one of the first moments I exited the house, I walked down the backyard and I could see a neighbor who'd seen me. And that neighbor, immediately thought I was having treatment for cancer, which is often an assumption that happens. That was one of the first people to see me, and to see his reaction, I was like, oh, go. And then off into the city, I went after our session together with a whole lot of little tools that you gave me, to things to say to myself in the moments where I was feeling weak.
I mean, what was it that you were scared of? Like, with other people, particularly because you said you wondered if people would still want to, be around you and interact with you. Like, what were you afraid of?
I feel like because maybe I was just looking so different. And would someone want to be with someone that looks so different and weird, let's say?
Sure.
Because that's how I felt. I felt like some kind of alien. And I laughed with my mum, saying it feels like, I don't feel like this anymore, but it feels like I'm walking down the street with my bum hanging out. That's how I felt.
Yeah. Also, which is also bold, presumably.
And just so nothing to hide. You can hide a little bit behind your hair.
Sure. You can style it to show a little bit of who you are that day or what you're thinking and feeling, whereas you've literally got nothing to hide behind.
Yeah.
And so how was it walking into work? Tell us about that. Tell us about the first big meeting that you had and how that was. What was running through your mind? Did you address the elephant in the room, or did you just go as normal?
Definitely address the elephant in the room, because all of my colleagues, all of my clients have known me for 15 years with hair. And so to turn up suddenly with no hair is different. And so I want to just acknowledge that for everyone and try and make that as comfortable as possible, because the automatic assumption is that I have cancer. And so I wanted to let everyone know that I don't, and I'm well. It was hard because it was early days. And so I wasn't able to really talk about it for too long without getting quite emotional. So I think for a while I didn't go out and see clients. It was just originally with my colleagues who I worked with, who were all incredibly beautiful. Not always saying the right thing, but saying what they felt was the right thing, but also very supportive. So it was like a process of coming out, if you like, to various people. First, my family and close friends, then my immediate colleagues, and then slowly and surely to wider and wider people that I deal with. And now everyone who I know in my circle is aware, and I've sort of come out to everyone, if you like. That's kind of how it felt.
You said some people would say the wrong thing, and we'll give people kudos and the benefit of the doubt because everyone's always trying to say something, and
Yeah.
and I talked to Imogen Khan from Good Morning, and we talked about people saying the wrong thing when you're grieving as well, and essentially this is a type of grief. What are some examples of the wrong thing? And I'm going to have a huge guess and say something like, "Don't worry, it'll grow back."
Yeah. Well, on those lines, so it was one of the biggest things I think people said, a lot of people said, was that it was just hair. And I know it's just hair, but there's just so much wrapped up in your hair and it's part of your identity and it's a part of you. And so I then started to have sympathy for people who lost anything, any kind of thing from their body without their choice. I'm sure it's a similar feeling, and I'm sure it's also very different to lose a limb or something like that. But it's not just hair. It is a part of you. It's your identity. And so I had to go through this big shift of who that person was before. I was someone that liked to just blend in and not stand out, very happy with that, to suddenly someone who had no choice, but you're standing out and heads are turning, people are looking all the time still, although I see it less now. But yeah, so from going from that to that, so it's not just hair. People then telling me, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And this and that. And I know it always came from a good place, but there's nothing you can do for an autoimmune. Once that triggers, there really isn't a lot you can do to make it go back into regression or whatever the word it is, remission. And again, I know people don't know and they don't mean to say the wrong things, but it did feel like, oh, I'm not doing everything I could possibly be doing to make my hair come back here. So those were the kind of things. Oh, and you could just wear a wig. And I'd be like, gosh, am I that repulsive that you think I need to throw a wig on? And why do I need to wear a wig if I'm looking around at all the bald blokes not wearing a wig? Why do I have to wear a wig? And that's when I started to really question and actually say to myself, no, I choose not to wear a wig. And I know it's different for everyone with alopecia. And I don't, if someone chooses to wear a wig, that's fine. But for me, I established that wasn't the pathway for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what actually is how does it happen? What is alopecia with your body? What's going on?
Yeah, so it's autoimmune. My father had an autoimmune, and they say it's genetic.
So he had a different autoimmune issue?
He did, yeah. He had one called Wegener's granular. I think that's it.
Okay.
So that's a nasty one, and pretty much they're all nasty in terms of your physical health, except for alopecia. So I kind of feel quite fortunate. If I had to have one, it's genetic, and so it can be triggered. If I had to have one, this is the one I would pick because, it doesn't impact me physically. I can keep up with the boys and my health is obviously really important. So it does feel like I got lucky in that sense because the autoimmune that my father had ultimately did kill him. Immunes are a mystery, and there are some that are more well-studied and have more remedies to keep it in remission. Alopecia is not. It doesn't get a lot of funding because it doesn't impact you physically. It's only mentally. So it doesn't have a lot of funding. They've just approved these things called JAKs, which suppresses your immune system. I could take those and my hair would grow back if I took those.
But would that not then suppress your immune system so you'd be more prone to getting COVID and all of the other things that are around and about?
Yeah, exactly. That, and also, they don't know that, people haven't been on them for long enough. They don't really know what other impacts it could have. They're still doing more and more studies, and there could be some drugs in the future. We'll see. But for now, I just made that decision once again. I choose my health over having hair. So, yeah, they don't really know. I really think there was something hormonal. It happened as my period returned. I find those two things happening at the same time very coincidental. So perhaps hormones triggered it for me. Maybe it was a perfect storm as well. Hormones, stress.
Stress, a little bit sleepless with a young baby and yeah, all of the things sort of
Yeah.
thing. So when we talked about it just on the weekend, you sort of mentioned that you feel like now it was a baptism of fire and you were forced to come from the back of the room to where you like to blend in. You were really forced to suddenly have eyes on you. How has that impacted your confidence, I suppose, overall, even if you were dragged tooth and nail into this sort of new state? How has it been?
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible journey, and one that, now 6 years later, and I find this fascinating too, because I feel like I'm definitely way more confident than I was pre-hair. Forced to the front, like you said, big journey of going through, okay, unpacking what it is that I value about myself. Before, with my hair, I didn't really like much about myself. Didn't really at all, really. Rock bottom confidence, but I liked my hair. That was one thing that I kind of liked, which
How's
was
the
interesting.
irony?
The process that I went through after losing my hair was realizing it's not what I look like. And it's shocking how many people do think that is your value in what you look like. And I know we want to look good and I know we want to present, and that helps you to feel more confident for sure. So there is something definitely in that, but it's not all. It's a small part. And so getting to that point and realizing that was hugely transformational and freeing as well. I became to enjoy being in my own skin a lot more. And I started to enjoy people turning and looking. And I started to enjoy standing out. And I started to realize, actually, this is something that makes me really different. And this is something I can use to my benefit. People remember me. I thought, oh, this is lovely. Suddenly I have lots of people in the community coming up and talking to me because, oh, there's that bald lady. And I had a little chat with her down the street the other day and I'd forgotten them, and that feels awful. But I'm like, okay, I know why they remember me. This happens all the time. So I liked that. I started to like the feeling of standing out. And yeah, so now I quite enjoy it.
Did you do something specifically to get from that space of shame and fear and wanting to hide to feeling accepted, liking how it looks and feeling accepted in your sort of closer community to actually being able to find that within yourself, like the realization that you are so much more than just your appearance, and therefore sort of falling in love with yourself on a whole different level? Like, did you do something or was it just about that?
Yeah. So initially it was the grieving. And so I wanted to be with people who had alopecia as well. That was the first step, hanging out with people that had lost their hair who could really understand exactly what we were going through.
But how did you find these people? Tell us about that.
Facebook, that was incredible. And so there were groups, communities, social media. So that's the positive of social media, isn't it?
course.
Finding people who, those little communities. And then a lot of them who were in the area I would catch up with as well and stuff with. So that was the first process, sort of that grieving process and meeting with them. Then it was sort of coming out of that. And the way I did it, I didn't ever meet with any sort of psychologist or anything like that, although I'm pretty sure that would also be really good. But I did a lot of podcasts to help me get through this. And there'd be so many, wonderful. I can't think of any of the examples now. Life coaches with their podcasts that they have as well, all that kind of stuff. I just drank it all up. Books. And yeah, that was the way I got through it, just healing through all of this stuff. Turia Pitt's book was a big help to me. The process, the thing that she went through that changed her incredible, how she looked and yet how she presents in the world. She was a huge inspiration to me. So I devoured all her books. And often I would think, Taria's fronting up and confident. I can do this too. So being inspired by others as well. But I did a lot of podcasts. to help me get through this. And there'd be so many wonderful life coaches with their podcasts that they have as well, all that kind of stuff. I just drank it all up, books. And yeah, that was the way I got through it. The process that she went through that changed her, incredible at how she looked and yet how she presents in the world. She was a huge inspiration to me.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like it's almost like a self-development degree. You put yourself through university of, all the knowledge that there is available. And unlike when we just listen to it and don't action it, which often happens as people just sort of listen to it and be like, oh, that's interesting. You've actually had to put it into play to live it, right? To live it.
Here's the interesting thing, though, what I've witnessed after going. So there was this moment, I remember walking along and just feeling quite high on whatever it was. I felt invincible. I felt really good. And like if you could see an aura, like I was like shining bright. Now, however, and I think this is really interesting, I've almost returned to not pre-losing hair, but like status quo. And I feel like it's made me realize that you're not going to suddenly just, have arrived and that's it. No more work is ever required. You're constantly needing to refresh. You will always be evolving to be better. And there will be days where I still feel yuck, but it's very short-lived. Actually, probably they're not days. They're more like moments these days. They're not even days. But yeah, it's a constant progress. You're never fully, I don't think, a finished work of art. I think you're constantly having to work on yourself, to remind yourself of how to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned status quo. I think it's really normal that we get into a phase where we're like, okay, I got through that thing and I'm feeling like I've arrived at a place, at a level. And it's okay to enjoy that status quo. I think the idea of constant self-improvement can be a little bit exhausting, but you get to this place of status quo, but then life throws you another thing, whether it is perimenopause and suddenly everything goes awry, or you've got issues within your family or something else that requires you to dig deep and find another area of resilience or another strength inside yourself that you're forced to actually level up. I think we would stay in the status quo if things didn't often force us to relook and keep growing and keep learning. It's a real flaw in human development, I think. That's endless and ongoing. But yeah, you're definitely right. It is constant. There isn't a place of arriving, right? Place of arriving.
No.
So you mentioned that often there is an assumption that you are undergoing chemo or that you are unwell with cancer. Have you ever used that to your benefit?
I haven't initiated it. I have certainly had beautiful people come up to me. I get looks sometimes of sympathy, so I know that that's perhaps what they're thinking. I get a lovely smile sometimes. I get beautiful people coming up to me and sharing their experience of going through chemo and losing their hair. And sometimes I might say, hey, that's not me, and thank you for sharing that with me, but I've got this. Or sometimes I just sort of think, you know what, it doesn't need to be said in this moment. I'm just going to let that go. I've been given a giant bag of Lindor Lindt chocolates from Qantas air staff on a plane who obviously thought I had cancer, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep these.
Do you ever steal someone's park at the car park and then look at them with a hang dog expression?
I haven't done that. Surprisingly, I'm surprised sometimes when I do try to use it without saying anything, but I'll whip the hat off or anything that I might be wearing to be a little more overt to try and get what I want. Oh, I don't. So I think
people, I tell ya.
Yeah.
How do you suggest to people to grow their confidence in ways that aren't dependent on how other people perceive you?
Yeah. I mean, had I not gone through something like this that forced me to, I mean, it comes from experience. I'm often in conversations with children or other people, my colleagues who are obviously worried about how they look and perceived. Yeah, it's hard to say. I say to them, you've got to, I try and tell them with my words to not worry about that. I wear different clothes these days. And I remember telling people, just do whatever you want. Like, what's holding you back? Be you and all this kind of stuff. But what can they do? I mean, other than what I did, listening to all of those podcasts and being inspired by those people that I mentioned, I look around now, and if I do see someone doing something that I think cool, that's really different and they're standing out, I actually really admire that.
What do you think
Um,
prevented you from doing it before?
it's just that not wanting to stand out, just be one in the crowd, I think.
Do you make standing out mean something? Like, is it like, you didn't want to stand out for a specific reason, or like standing out makes you a show off, or like, was there a belief in there somewhere that,
Yeah, possibly. I just didn't want to have any attention on me, I guess, was probably what it was rooted in. I mean, I feel like it's something maybe that comes perhaps with age. You look at children when they're really little, and it's lovely how they don't care. They say stuff, they do stuff, dance wherever. And then this all sort of shuts down a little bit, doesn't it?
get more self-conscious and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you
Yeah.
remember when you did start getting more self-conscious?
Yeah, I do. I was actually a good swimmer at primary school. And remember my boobs starting to develop a lot earlier than the other girls, and the boys, teasing me at the time, standing up on the blocks before the gun goes. And I stopped swimming competitively when that happened. Now, wasn't going to be an Olympic swimmer, but it stopped me from doing something that I loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was where.
And really, that's how it starts, right? Is that kind of thing, is getting noticed for something that makes you stand out, and then all of a sudden it spreads, right?
Yeah.
It spreads.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who is kind of facing their own identity transformation? And I see this in my work a lot as well. Sometimes it's as simple as, not simple, but it's a very different scenario. I suppose somebody who has worked in a role in a really long time, and then they suddenly, like, they've put so much time and effort into it, and then they don't love it anymore. But the idea of leaving it and doing something else, their identity is wrapped up in this thing that they're doing, or this, I don't know, sometimes identity gets wrapped up in a job or a relationship, or an identity of, I am this person's, friend, sister, whatever. And if that relationship changes and whole identities can be rocked, what would you say to anyone who's going through their own identity transformation?
Yeah, the first thing I would say would be like to be kind to yourself. Like, you've got to go through this process. It takes time. It's not going to happen immediately. And you will slowly, through doing the other things, discover more about yourself, your capabilities. So it will come in time, I think, and to let it have that time. That would be the biggest thing. Yeah.
We have to share something a little bit funny. Can you please tell us about your eyebrows?
I mean, hilarious. So, I mean, that was part of it. It was my hair that came out. Then it was my eyebrows, and then finally my eyelashes. Actually, all of my hair, I should say, is all
everything
gone.
everywhere. Can we all, before we go into the eyebrows, you told me something very interesting, which I had never considered, and it might be interesting for our listeners, that nasal hair is what keeps your boogers in.
Yeah, keeps your boogers in.
And no nasal hair, boogers fall out.
Boogers fall out, boogers fly out. I have constant nasal drip, which is really annoying. But, no big deal, really. But I always have to have a tissue on me because you never know. And honestly, I never know. And sometimes my husband is like, oh, you've got a big nasal drip going on.
Now, nostril hair is something that you just never really give any thought to, right? It's coming out of your nose and it just lives there quite happily, and we don't give it any thought. So the impact of not having any nostril hair, who knew that that's a thing?
Yeah, and there is no easy way. The level of thought I used to give to the hair, my, let's say, pubic hair, and like, getting it ready for swimmers and all of that kind of stuff, or
Yeah.
the odd, your monobrow and plucking that, and all of the energy I used to give to it. How ironic that now it's gone, and actually now I have the best bikini line down at the beach, which I also love. I love bending over and going, "Whoop, not a problem for me. No runaway pubes at all." Oh, it's such a good feeling.
It's a little humble brag. The
Yes,
best bikini line at the beach.
100%. Like, yeah, and that's one of the perks.
French, you're learning French with all of the extra time that you're saving from like taking care of your body hair.
Yeah, no, I know. Unfortunately not. No, thank God. I don't know what I used to do with that time that, you go and get your hair done
Oh,
3 hours, the hairdresser, $500 later.
yeah, you just
I mean,
absorb it. You absorb it into the rest of your life, and now you buy
yeah,
fabulous earrings. Okay, back to the eyebrows.
eyebrows is a funny story. So one of the things I have done is got some tattooed eyebrows because that did make me feel a little more, let's say, three-dimensional. So I went and got that done. And then my alopecia did go into somewhat of a remission. I mean, because I have universalis, it's very strong. And so it doesn't come through, but I do get a little bit of like peach fuzz, which you can't see. So my eyebrows and some of my eyelashes started to grow back. And the irony was they started to grow back lower than where my tattooed eyebrows were put in, which is very frustrating.
Rocking like double eyebrows for
Double
a while.
eyebrows.
What did you do about that?
Well,
I didn't check it. Did they fall out
yeah,
again? Or?
they've got Revlon have these, and this is for all my fellow alopecians out there, they probably already know this, but yeah, that Revlon have these wonderful peach fuzz like razors
I've
that,
seen.
yeah. So I just rub that over and get rid of that, which, is
Once
no
upon a
problem.
time, you would have loved your eyebrows to grow back, and now the second they show up, you're like, "Oh, they got to go
I
because they're
know.
not in the right spot." Or
No,
something like
exactly.
that.
But, hair is this crazy thing where we're not happy with it. It's either too much, too little, it's just this
Yeah.
crazy, funny thing.
Yeah. I was watching 1923, the series that was a prequel to Yellowstone recently, and the fabulous character of Helen Mirren was saying something along the lines of, "Oh, the fashion is that women remove their hair from their legs. Can you imagine anything more ridiculous? I mean, soon they're going to be getting them to remove it from between their legs." And lo and behold, yes, she was absolutely right. This whole, industry. I mean, I suppose we could talk about, the patriarchy, and we could talk about porn industry and all of the different things that have set the trends on what hair is acceptable and desirable. But yeah, I know that, wherever the training of our brains has come from, we still live in a world that we all spend a lot of time thinking about, the errant, or is it too much or too little, or what do I want to do with it? What do I choose to do with my body hair?
And not just for the women, for the blokes as well. I was saying to you the other day that getting your hair transplanted is a major industry in Turkey.
Yeah,
And when I go
absolutely.
there with my husband, and I can see, so many guys around with all of the bandages and stuff,
It's incredibly painful. It's a painful process because they're like
Yeah.
taking whole chunks of hair from another region in the body, transplanting it.
Yeah.
It is painful. The second sexiest attribute, according to a recent study that women find in men, is a bald head. I have my own balding. I actually have had a couple of baldies now, and I find it sexy. And I have made this joke as well. Carolyn's husband, Semi, who is also the godfather of my children, is a very tattooed man. He has full sleeves, and they live in a very funky part of Sydney. So the fully tattooed guy with the bald partner totally fits into the inner West culture. You guys look totally rock and roll. You're the funkiest couple on the block. Like, it's not like you live somewhere where it's unacceptable, which is, I think, interesting, because before it's almost like you didn't fit into that environment because you were too
Yeah. Well, just
put together or too nice or too with
yeah.
your lob.
Yeah. I feel very, going through Newtown, I feel like I'm with my peeps. It's great.
That's great. So is there anything that you would like to share with us about your journey or anything that has surprised you about it, or any final messages for anyone?
Yeah, I think what has surprised me about it, or one of the other benefits of it, has been the empathy and the space I have now for others that have a visible difference. Just hold so much more empathy for those that are out in the world, whether it be in a wheelchair, a prosthetic, or any kind of visible difference at all. And they're out there facing the world. And I know they're getting heads turned, including me turning and looking, and
Yeah.
not for any other reason other than being curious,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of that's naturally what we are, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have more space and more empathy, even more so than what I did for that. And that's another lovely place because I can then pass that, on to the kids and make sure they're hyper aware of that too.
Yeah. I think we can all be more aware. It's something we could all be more aware of. I guess but it is that empathy, it is acceptance, it is, not making people feel uncomfortable and, being mindful of our not just focus, but also our words, even when we're coming from a nice place, maybe it's not really our place to say anything. Yeah, I think that there is always more learning to do in the arena of empathy for sure.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing a vulnerable story. I know that it has been such a big and vulnerable experience for you over the last 6 years, and I'm honored to have walked beside you and to call you one of my dearest friends. So thank you so much for coming along and having such a good chat.
Oh, thank you. It's been a great chat, Danielle. Thank you.
Thanks so much. See you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of Big Stuff as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, it would really help me if you wanted to share it with just one person that you think is going to get something out of it. And also feel free to drop a comment. All of these things really help podcasts to gain more ears, and that's what we're really here for. Also, be sure to subscribe, then you will never miss an episode. If you want to find out more about me, who I am, what I do, then you can go and check me out at daniellecolley.com.au. I'll see you next episode for more big stuff.